My name's Nick Busietta, and this is Adam Barton. We're, I guess, from Liminal VR. I guess we're here. This is the second of a series of LinkedIn Live sessions that we're starting to, to do as a new initiative for us. We had a session with Damien Marathi and Dr. Paula Riza Alba from Liminal a couple of weeks ago on virtual reality at Sleep. So this is the second installment. Maybe just to start, I'll introduce myself. I'm the managing director and co-founder of Liminal. We've been, I guess Liminal has been a company focused on neuroscience and psychology since 2015, when we established ourselves, and we've I guess been doing a lot of research and development over the years, and Adam over here has been a big part of that. So I guess, we're here to talk about one of our most recent initiatives, the ability of virtual reality to, help people manage their focus. And I think maybe before we sort of dive into the specifics of that, maybe I'll allow you, Adam, to introduce yourself and see, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Adam Barton. I guess my life as a researcher began it's about 10 years or so ago when I completed my psychology master's back in the UK. That's where I picked up particular interest and fascination with cognitive psychology and attention. I guess, since that time, I've emigrated over here to Melbourne, Australia, originally traveling, but that's where I kind of met yourself, Nick, and Damien, our other co-founder, and I guess, started working at Liminal. It has been and continues to be a brilliant space for me to, practice research and, work creatively and analytically. Kind of almost 7 years later, I'm still here working as a researcher for the company. It's very happy to be here. Yeah. I guess during that time as well, I think it was about 5 years ago when it began. I've completed my PhD in basically exploring the use of VR for regulating attention and mood. That's all wrapped up now, and kind of back full time with Liminal. So
it was an interesting start, wasn't it? You first came across Liminal applying for a marketing role right in the early days, just when you'd finished. I think it was a postgraduate course in marketing, and we got you in on that basis, and then we just saw you had this psychology background, and your role quickly shifted away from marketing organically into helping us with our R&D, and it just flowered from there. And before we knew it, we were sponsoring your PhD at Deakin University in VR and attention and focus. And so maybe why don't we start there? Tell us about your PhD, what inspired you to do that, and what were the results?
I'll try and do that as concisely as possible. Obviously, there's a PhD is a huge, in this case, 5-year-long project with, many different moving parts along the way. I guess, as I mentioned, at the core, I was looking at the use of VR for regulating attention and mood. I guess, there's several reasons why I looked at VR and sort of thought that was the perfect modality and tool to sort of achieve that. One of them being, the incredible level of immersion we get with VR. So that ability to completely replace our audiovisual perception with a virtual environment, one which is entirely controlled, or can be entirely controlled and tailored to kind of put you in a more optimal state of mind, so you can take yourself out of a very heavily, say, distracting environment, or one which is kind of impacting you negatively in any way whatsoever, and find a place to kind of optimize things temporarily and take yourself out of there, which can be very, very helpful. So yeah, what I was doing specifically, like I guess I was looking at attention for the broader population, so looking at areas where people are commonly suffering with periods of inattention. And I guess there's two main periods, one of them being, I guess, mental fatigue. So mental fatigue being, that I guess brain state that happens when you've been overstimulated, you've been working too hard for a sustained amount of time, and you kind of lose that ability to like hold your attention and use your attention and essentially work at an optimal level. And mental fatigue has become much more pronounced, particularly with the big kind of societal shift over the past few decades we've seen from lots of manual labor type work to much more desk-based knowledge work that we often find ourselves doing today. And because of that shift, we've seen a big rise in mental fatigue, people suffering with mental fatigue, in short bursts during the day, and also in longer form kind of burnout type scenarios as well. So that was one key area that I was sort of looking at, providing support for and help for by using VR. And the other being, I guess, states of mind wandering. It's probably something we can all relate to. It might be whilst watching a LinkedIn live stream, for example. You might have periods where you zone in and out. It might be whilst you're reading a book, you get through a page, the bottom of the page, and realize, wait, what on earth happened whilst I was reading that page? You've got no idea. I have to go back to the start and read again. It's because our minds, in their kind of default setting, they just want to flit around and go from thought to thought, and we can have just periods where it's very difficult to control our attention as we would like to. So I guess, yeah, that's what my PhD was looking at, those two specific areas of inattention that I think a lot of us can relate to during the day. I guess advancing on that, I was looking at some specific ways to improve attention in VR, and there's an approach called attention state training, which basically refers to a series of known activities which can produce quite immediate improvements in attention. After like a short period, for example, short bursts of exercise, meditation, spending times in nature. These are all state training practices that can help to put you in a more optimal state of mind afterwards. So what I was doing in my PhD was looking at how can we draw from some of those activities, some of those principles, and incorporate them into VR experiences. These VR experiences being something which is going to be effective, so improve attention, or provide like a restoration from fatigue, and also things that are gonna capture people's imaginations and provide motivation to take part and sort of incorporate those activities into daily life. Like as like we all know, for example, that we should all exercise more, we should all eat better, we should all find time to meditate. But how often do we actually decide to do those things? We often go for like the easier option, some other type of distraction. It might be I'll spend time on my phone, I'll browse the internet. We engage in those little micro break activities instead of what might actually help us perform better. So yeah, I was very much looking at ways of creating quite novel, really interesting approaches to essentially VR versions of meditation, for example, and VR versions of restorative environments. So with one of those routes was a sort of interactive approach to meditation in VR, which is quite a novel approach. I think most people's perceptions of sort of guided meditation, so whether it's via a VR headset or whether it's via headphones and listening to an audio tape or what have you, it's very much passive, and you're sat there listening and following vocal guidance, vocal instruction, which is fantastic for many people. But what VR offers is an ability to kind of meditate in an interactive way where we can incorporate movement. So for example, by incorporating movement is a really fantastic way of pulling your attention into the present moment, particularly if you move with purpose. And so these more kind of like interactive movement styles of meditation are also really great for people who struggle to kind of just sit still and listen to voice guidance. A lot of people have understandably have some difficulty doing that, and also by incorporating interactions into a VR experience, you can also use it as a way to, I guess, provide users with feedback. So one of the core kind of or fundamental aspects of meditation you'll often come across is that you're asked or like encouraged to pay attention to a stimulus. It might be your a bodily sensation like breathing, for example, or a particular thought. Notice when your attention has wandered, and then just notice that it's wandered and bring your attention back to the thing that you're trying to focus on. But that can be difficult for people, right? Like not everybody recognizes and notices when their attention is gone. And when you're using interactive modes of meditation, say, for example, you're encouraging somebody to maintain a certain motion pattern, for example, we can provide subtle cues in the environment to help guide users and inform users that their attention might have drifted off task. So yeah, that was, I guess, one area. There's I guess another area too where I was looking at more the attention restoration side of things. So when it comes to periods of cognitive fatigue, what you really need to do is place yourself in an environment which is going to be conducive to restoration. So that there's decades of research on this topic, and a lot of the research would point towards spending time in natural environments, because if you compare attention restoration when people are spending time in natural environments versus urban environments, which are the things we commonly see in the physical environment, that's what we're commonly exposed to. If you spend time in nature, that can restore your tired cognitive functions back to a normal kind of functioning level. And so yeah, that's another area of exploration in my thesis was, can we take some of the principles of attention restoration theory and what makes nature such a great tool for restoration? Can we extract those principles and also utilize them in abstract environments? Much like what you can see behind me, I guess.
Yeah.
So with VR, we can absolutely implement these incredible natural environments, and I encourage developers and users to continue seeking out natural environments in VR, because it's absolutely spectacular. But we also have access to, you know, infinite novelty in VR. We can witness and experience these amazing abstract environments which really capture the imaginations of people. Now, so yeah, there's a few things or aspects which make natural environments restorative. Few of the key things being soft fascination, which essentially means, you know, fascinating audiovisual information or stimuli, should I say, which captures your interest, is very soothing to watch and experience, but it doesn't really impose any like cognitive demands. It doesn't, you can just watch that without any, it doesn't produce any level of fatigue somewhat. But if you just compare that to an urban environment, if you're, you know, walking across a high street and there's cars, there's people that you've got to navigate, like it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. But in nature, it's much more different. I guess the opposite of soft fascination would be like hard fascination, which, you know, if we on the Liminal platform, we have a category called awe, which is essentially a series of experiences all designed to generate or blow your mind, you know, and sort of open up your mind in that way. That would be hard fascination. It's quite a lot of information to take in. So yeah, soft fascination. You also need to find a way of, you know, essentially being away. You need to take yourself away from the, you know, the kind of stress-inducing stimulus or the thing that's making you tired. You need to, if it's work, for example, we need to step away from work. VR does that inherently. That's one of the great things about VR. You know, as I mentioned before, you can easily step away from work, and also, yeah, sustained interest as well. So environments need to kind of ideally keep you interested over the period of time, you know, without getting bored. So I, yeah, incorporated some of those key principles into the design of, Equilibrium, which is this experience here behind me. One of the main challenges, though, of, I guess, using abstract environments for restoration is that abstract environments can inherently produce some element of cognitive load. They take a little bit more processing to kind of, you know, you're in a novel environment. It's not something you're familiar with. You need to there's a bit of time there and effort there to make sense of where you are and what's going on. So the way I tackled that was when, you know, I kind of stumbled across the literature on fractals. So fractals are essentially shapes that we see in nature, and they can be generated mathematically. These shapes are contain lots of self-similarity. So lots of symmetry is probably an easy way to think about it. So we're basically seeing lots of shapes, or there might be just one or two shapes, but you're seeing them in different orientations and different magnification scales. And because of that, it's actually quite easy on the mind. Like you can expose people to something which at first glance is really quite complex and interesting, but actually it's quite easy to process. So yeah, I guess in a nutshell, that was kind of what I was exploring, was these, you know, these concepts of interactive meditation and abstract restorative environments. And yeah, from a series of experiments that we did, yeah, you know, we've had great results in terms of, you know, focus and mental fatigue, and sort of deep dived into a lot of qualitative analysis as well. So, you know, just you know, really just discovering people's thoughts and opinions and reactions to to the experiences. And yeah, in general, things went really well. I hope I've not rambled on for too long there, but
No,
it's hard to
no, it's really good, Adam. Like
conceptualize.
I wanted to start there because that sets a really good context about I guess why we're talking about this now at Liminal, and wanted to get straight into the core concepts, and it's been really good to listen to. Even though, look, from Liminal's point of view, we've been talking about focus even since before you came on board. It was we were considering, well, is that going to be one of the first things that we do, as a company, and we've sort of, we never really dived into it, and it was your the opportunity that came along to be part of your PhD and really support that, and it really helped shape our agenda as well, and we've learned a lot being part of that, and it's been a really valuable exercise. Probably at this point it might be worth us taking a step back a little bit from the subject matter, and just to talk about Liminal and the Liminal platform more generally, because I think it's relevant to contextualize, like, well, who is Liminal, and why are we supporting this PhD, which I guess is finished now, and what does that mean for us as a studio and a company? So I guess I co-founded Liminal VR in 2015 with Damien Marathi, who's I guess the CEO, and I'm the managing director. And we've been, we were struck very early on about virtual reality's potential to really have this, almost visceral impact on a person. You have this, a really high quality experience generates what, in the field of psychology, we call it a sense of presence, that sense that you've, you're in VR, you've got this cognitive buy-in, and you're feeling these emotions, and you almost, the headset, after a while, the fact it's a digital environment, even if it's abstract, can sometimes become almost invisible to you, and you just have this acceptance that, what you're experiencing, at least for you, is real. And so for us, like back in 2015, what really struck us was that virtual reality has this ability to induce emotional and cognitive states. So we decided to set up Liminal around that, and we took a very R&D heavy role in the sort of approach that we're doing. So, a typical studio in our space would establish a development team and hire developers and artists, and we did that. But we also, from the very get-go, wanted to establish an evidence base around some of the sorts of design principles you were just discussing, Adam, and really sort of work out, so how do we go about creating these experiences, and reliably transforming people's emotional and cognitive states. The culmination of what's turned out to be 9 years and counting of R&D that Liminal have been conducting is the Liminal platform, which was which is currently on the Meta Store. It's a platform of short virtual reality experiences to change how people feel and perform. It's what you see behind me right here. So we've got 6 categories of experience right now: calm, energy, relief, or sleep. And I guess the subject of this discussion, focus. And we've also got a virtual reality lab where we're testing a whole range of different design principles at scale. So our focus category is, the culmination of a lot of the work that you've been doing, Adam, in the PhD, and I guess there's something that might be worth us delving into. But like, I thought I'd also add that there's a really a really important part of what we're trying to achieve in Liminal and the Liminal platform is not just at the front end and the design, which is what I guess you've been discussing now, like how will you go about creating an experience that delivers focus enhancing effects or restorative effects, but like how do we validate that within the context of the Liminal platform? And a big part of that from our end is psychometric validation. And Adam, yourself and Paula, who's our other researcher, behavioral neuroscientist, has I guess been working really with us for over a number of years now across all our categories doing that. So maybe let's talk about that in focus, like on the Liminal platform, like how, like I guess maybe do you want to talk about sort of how we went about creating these psychometrics and what they are and I guess what have we learned so far from the results?
Yeah, so it's certainly a difficult process. We have this platform which we have thousands and thousands of users who are using these various different categories and experiences, and we want to make sure that the experiences that we're uploading are having the desired effects. And we also want to directly compare our various experiences, rank them in terms of effectiveness, and also identify areas where some experiences might perform really well in some areas and maybe less well in other areas. So we're really trying to gather as much informative data as we can across all of our categories. And now with focus specifically, I guess what we've started with is a kind of self-report approach, and we're essentially, because that's the easiest approach, which can apply to so many users and have the smallest kind of time cost for people to complete. I'll move on to other aspects of that shortly, but essentially what we're really interested with focus is how does people's reported sense of mental fatigue and mental vitality change from pre to post experience? How does people's sense of focus change from pre to post? And also just in general, how much do people enjoy the experiences? So that data alone gives us a very good way of validating whether experiences are meeting both of those core benchmarks. Like ideally, we really want people to leave that experience feeling more focused, but we don't want that to come at the cost of a greater level of fatigue, for example. So it's really critical that both of those are being checked off and performing well.
Yeah.
Now, as I talk about the self-report stuff, I don't know if we should delve into the cognitive sort of assessments right now, Nick, but we can
well, I'm very happy to talk about it. Maybe let's just talk a little bit more about the psychometrics just quickly. So maybe more just some context about like working at Liminal. Whenever we launch a new category of experience like focus, and we went through it more recently with sleep, the psychometrics always comes up as probably like one of those areas that has the most vigorous level of debate you could possibly come across at Liminal. Like everyone is very, very passionate about them, and because really for us that really guides our the way we think about sort of which experience is working and which experience is not. Are people understanding the questions? Like, is this going to give us the data that we need? Are they too long? That kind of thing. So we're we're very, very interested in in getting the psychometrics right, and it's something that we take a lot of pride in at Liminal. And so far across the Liminal platform, we've achieved, we're pushing 1.2 million psychometrics from the time that we started. So, and that has really, we go to that and we're looking at them every day, and how the experience, each experience in each category, is performing, and we try to be as transparent as we can with users in that regard as well. So we've got within the Liminal platform, and you can't see it behind me, but say you clicked on the focus category, it would open up, a library of different focus experiences, and then each focus experience would have its own experience panel with information about the experience, which will include some of the psychometric results for that experience. So for us, that's a really important differentiating factor as to why people might want to use Liminal. I think it's also a way for us to see what's going on. Is an experience, performing to expectation? Are we hitting the mark with this approach in this particular experience? And also, how do we, what learnings can we derive from different experiences that went well or didn't go so well? It's also worth noting that Liminal experiences are not all just developed in-house by Liminal. We work with partners all over the world. So those learnings that we're deriving from those psychometrics are going into design resources that we make available to partners who might want to jump in and make their own focus experience. And so, and then we learn from that as well. And we're constantly looking to create this feedback loop where we're doing front-end research, we're looking at the academic literature, we've got our own design theories as well based on what we've learned does and doesn't work in VR, create these experiences, put them to the test, get data, go back, review, and then share it with the community and create this ongoing feedback loop. And for us, that has over the years turned out to be a very valuable exercise, and something that we're really we're only in the early stages of our focus experiences, but very, very excited about that. So I think yeah. I'll go on, Adam.
I was just gonna touch on that briefly, because I just to reiterate the importance of the psychometrics. I think one of the key things is it kind of affords us the ability to adopt a somewhat experimental approach to the VR experiences that we develop. So with all the vast majority of our experiences, we incorporate known, relatively concrete theoretical concepts which we know are going to have the desired outcomes and effects. And we really reach those conclusions by, I guess, taking a systematic approach to review all the relevant scientific literature to come up with these key, I guess, ingredients. And so there's that side of things, but it also allows us to, I guess, explore and try out, I guess, more novel research findings as they come out. Things that novel research findings which haven't been, tested and validated through years and years of research. We have the ability to incorporate some of these new techniques into new experiences, and we have them there on the platform. We're always collecting data. We can see how effective they are, and we can learn a lot from trying new approaches that way. We can also incorporate different techniques in the lab as well. That's where we're able to kind of get a bit more of a deep dive into certain, design techniques and stuff. For example, one just came to mind. I think there was the experience Light Rain, which is a calming experience. It's a passive calming, just relaxing experience. And we we made an alteration to that, which we wanted to try out in the lab, where we basically incorporated a story narrative alongside the experience. And we essentially did an A/B split testing in the lab to kind of get a comparison. It just turns out that the narrative aspect really helped to elevate that experience. So yeah, I was just touching on what you were saying, Nick, and just like the importance of all the data we collect. It's yeah, super useful for what we're doing.
Yeah, and the other benefit of it is validating experiences. We know which are the best as far as our user feedback, what our user feedback is telling us. And, that gives our users the assurance that, hey, look, if I use, these are the experiences that I'm going to yield the most benefit from. But also, we're also testing things on the way. Sometimes experiences surprise us and outperform what we expect them to be, because we always know that we're always trying different things, and there's always a mix of different approaches, and then other times we think we've nailed something and it doesn't quite get the data that we expect, and that's all part of the journey, and that's all part of the ongoing learning and continuous improvement that we've been looking to put in place. But I guess with the psychometrics, we know that that's one method of validating experiences. It's not that there are other ways of doing it, and that's particularly important when it comes to validating the effects of virtual reality and focus, because really, like what we're looking to do is add another layer to that. It's really prompted us to do some work in cognitive assessments, and because we don't just want to find out that people say they feel more focused. What the next phase for us with this category is to, well, okay, let's put that to the test and see how people perform on different tasks, and so maybe and we've sort of started doing some preliminary work on that, and I guess we're looking now to going through our own R&D phase with a cognitive assessment dimension to our validation as well. And that's prompted us to get even more interested in cognitive assessments more generally as a longer term plan. But for present purposes, maybe Adam, do you want to talk about some of the things we're working through when it comes to our R&D on cognitive assessments? Just
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's lots of challenges, so it's certainly a work in progress. But yeah, essentially, as you mentioned, we're already collecting self-report data related to focus, and I do think that will always present lots of value. I think people are fairly good at sort of gauging their state of focus, but it's very important that we assess whether that is having real world performance related outcomes at the same time. So cognitive assessment measures or conventional assessment approaches are, I guess that using them in our platform setting has some, certainly some not small challenges, that's for sure. One of those being having such a large platform with such a large user base, where we have a bunch of different experiences. We're always adding experiences, sometimes often on a weekly basis. It's very, very difficult to be able to control how many VR experiences people do, how many assessments people do, and trying to do that in a balanced manner, which means that all the experiences can be compared equally in a balanced fashion. So it's a very, very difficult task to do. And also with sort of conventional assessments that exist, they're extremely long. They're often over 20 minutes long. They involve, I guess, what's called practice effects. So essentially, people will become better at a task, at a cognitive task, i.e. an assessment, simply because they've just practiced at that task and their skills are getting better, rather than their attentions actually getting better from A to B, they're just getting better at, you know, doing the task. It's not necessarily got anything to do with their attention. Also, the tasks aren't particularly sensitive to the, you know, momentary changes in attention that happen throughout the day. They're more so designed to, I guess, recognize large individual differences between different people. So, you know, it could be different age groups, or it could be used to sort of identify, you know, certain like neurological disorders, for example. So they're not very fine-tuned to pick up, you know, those momentary changes. So yeah, with that in mind, those are the kind of key challenges that we're trying to overcome, looking at using tasks with shorter durations which maintain and provide a reliable result, tasks which are, you know, highly engaging, you know, people actually want to and feel motivated to take part of them. Like the current sort of conventional approaches which exist are long, boring, tiresome, and people will often just you know, zone out of the tasks. It's not really got much to do with their attention. It's just not really relevant for them. It's not particularly engaging in that fashion.
And
so
sorry,
yeah.
I was just going to add quickly, and in a VR context, like one thing that we're always trying to you know, do is make sure that we're, you know, coming up with validation methods that are going to be meaningful and really give us valuable data that's going to help us improve over time. But we don't want to do so at the expense of the user experience. So it's always this very fine balancing act. We can't afford to, you know, ask people to do a 10-minute cognitive assessment, you know, every time they do an experience on Liminal. So this is just these are some of the issues we're always sort of working through and trying to map out like what the best way of approaching these sort of things are. Yeah, maybe
yeah, it's no short challenge.
That's it. So one of those things when I was saying before that, you know, the psychometrics generate a lot of debate. We also had a lot. Since we've started prototyping the cognitive assessments. Yeah, that generated a lot of pretty heavy debates as well. But that's all part of the journey.
That's it.
So maybe just quickly,
part of it.
Yeah. So quickly, like I'm conscious of time. We've got about 15 minutes to go. So I thought it might be worth quickly touching on just some of the other things that we do at Liminal. We're not all about the Liminal platform. We do a lot of training simulation and projects of that nature as well. Work with clients to you know, to help them realize learning or training needs. And I thought it might be worth touching on that a little bit, and especially in relation to how our research can, you know, apply to you know, developing novel solutions to VR, not outside of the context of the Liminal platform. And we've got and I think it's pretty safe to talk about it because we're doing another LinkedIn Live session with Endeavour Energy and Lumina, you know, who's a VR consultant that we work closely with in here in Australia. But just maybe we can talk a little bit about that project, which is just kicking off now, and Adam's sort of helping consult with us on that project because where, you know, it ties in really nicely with his PhD and research. It's a 3-phase installation training program that I guess is designed to bring in human factors into the mix of training. So what that means is you might be an electrician. You're learning how to perform a very specific task, you know, when sort of, you know, fault finding and trouble and testing someone's, you know, electrical configuration at their home. And then, you know, but there are dangerous points in that task, and there are times where things might happen in that environment that distract you when you're in the middle of your job, and then you come back to it. It's like, okay, well, what's going on? Where was I up to? Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I was up to here, and you've missed a step, and then something can go horribly wrong. So I think maybe, do you want to just quickly talk about that, Adam? I know we've only really just started kicking it off, but just how your background and your I guess your research, not specifically about this project, but how it can potentially apply to VR training, and how it can inform our approach of creating really novel solutions for clients that I guess give it a bit of a point of difference from a conventional VR training program.
Yeah, well, like in the case of the project that you just mentioned with Endeavour, for example, I guess the series of challenges there, but really interesting ones, kind of started with, I guess, working out what are the critical points during the training which present the most safety concerns. And so during those safety concerns, or those safety critical tasks, it's very important that the user, the trainee, or eventually the electrician, stays fully focused and on task. If their attention is broken, even for a short period of time, it could have quite serious catastrophic outcomes. It's very, very important. And so, yeah, what we are aiming to do is incorporate distractions into that training assessment, which are at first relevant to the job at hand, but also with VR we have the ability to kind of twist the dials somewhat and make those distractions slightly more prominent than what they might experience in real life, essentially, so that they've gone through the training and they've experienced a higher degree of distraction than what they might experience in the real world. They go into the real world with a preparedness which goes above what they might experience in their training, which is super important and valuable for trainees. I guess we're still in the process of working out exactly what the distractions will be, but we've talked about a combination of audio visual distractions. We're going to use some audio focused distractions, which I think will be really key, particularly taking advantage of the sort of localized sound in VR, so ensuring that sounds are coming from behind us, which we naturally respond to in a slightly more adverse and worried fashion. We're kind of like, it's kind of built into our survival instincts that way. If a sound or something is approaching us from behind, there's a sense of danger there, when we're probably more prone to look behind us. And also there's a general saying that if you hear something but you can't see it, it must be behind you. So this sort of thing happens, like, well, what's that? Where is it? And if trainees are responding in that kind of fashion whilst they're in the middle of this very technical task, dangerous task, then it could cause quite severe consequences, I guess. So we're just currently in the process of incorporating some of that research and knowledge at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, and it also again, that ties into some of the outcomes from the Liminal platform, where we're focused on again, our psychometrics and our affective design approach, where we're looking at designing experiences with certain emotional effects in mind. And one thing that I think is really untapped potential with VR training is simulated stress. And it's interesting in the context of an experience where we're testing distractions like simulated stress. I can see having a really important impact in that. Like, hey, if there's a rabid dog barking at you from behind the fence, then look, maybe that's going to take your attention away from what you should be focusing on, and you might be more prone to making a mistake. In fact, the very first energy experience we ever created, I think it was back in 2016, we accidentally freaked people out. We had a sea of reds, and we had it was just this, and lots of electricity, and it was a very energizing experience, but it really knocked it out of the park on the anxiety scale, which is not exactly what we were expecting. So, but like that, those are the learnings that we take, right? We take that and we apply those learnings to VR design, both within the Liminal platform, but more generally as well. And so like we're always looking at ways to, apply our research wherever we can across VR development, because the Liminal platform in itself is one thing, and it's the change in state is the end in and of itself, but also in the context of our learnings along the way, it's part of our central nervous system as a company, and we're always looking at applying this rich reservoir of research into all of our projects. So that it's a really exciting project with Endeavour that we're kicking off, and we're really hoping over time we get to do a lot more of them, because I think it's a really great use case for VR and a great use case for our data sets. In the context of, just quickly, only because we haven't really touched on it, just to double back on our focus category before we wind up, Adam, do you want to maybe just tell us like how you see like the focus category being used in practice in the real world? It's one thing if you're using VR for to help you with your focus. We're trying not to necessarily get people into flow states, specifically where you're like maximizing your cognitive absorption within the VR setting and feeling really focused during that session. It's really, we want people feeling really focused after their VR session, because obviously you don't want to induce fatigue, as you pointed out before. But like, what real world context do you see liminal focus experiences being used, and do you want to talk about that?
Sure. No, for me it's very much a daily use case, and sort of incorporating VR into periods during the day where it could be, for example, you're in a currently like a negative state, negative frame of mind. That might be a period of mental fatigue. It might be a busy wandering mind, which is kind of you're having struggle kind of diverting your attention from things that you're anxious or stressed about, for example, and you really just want to narrow your focus attention to the task in front of you that you're trying to complete. So it could, in that case, it could be, during a negative state arises, use the focus experience to kind of support that. Or it could be more situation based. So it could be before, a big important meeting, a big important presentation, or a big, it could be a sporting event, whatever it is, something which requires a high degree of focus and attention. I guess the idea is to use a short sort of 5-minute experience to get yourself in a more sort of optimal state. And so like I think that applies to many different work settings. VR has become with the advent of standalone untethered VR headsets, which are much cheaper nowadays. VR is much more accessible, whether it's from your home, whether it's from the office. It's much more accessible, So yeah, I think it applies to lots of different work environments. I certainly think it applies to school settings as well. Do you want to mention a little bit about that, Nick?
Yeah, it might be a good worth mentioning. So Liminal were fortunate enough to be awarded a fairly sizable Commonwealth government grant, where we've been testing the Liminal platform in schools, across the country here in Australia, and so we've I think as things currently stand, we've got 30 schools in place, and one of the things that we're testing is our new focus category in students. We're sort of targeting different things in the program, but one of the use cases that came to mind is, well, what happens with distracted kids? You're distracted, you're feeling anxiety or stressed out, and you play up in class, you can derail a class. So often there's no mechanism for a teacher to address that situation other than to send the student out of the room and get them to, I don't know, go whatever it might be, sit in the hallway or wherever teachers tend to send students in these situations. But like with, what we're experimenting with is, well, okay, what if a liminal focus experience was used by students in the classroom in that context? Is that going to, firstly, it isolates the student for a while. They're not disrupting other students, but they're staying in class, and hopefully they're in a better state to come back and rejoin the class after a short experience. Now, we know, having said that, there's practical challenges of doing that in the classroom. It's something that we want to test, but we don't know what the real world implementation and practicality of doing that's going to be. But I guess that's one of the questions that we're testing here in Australia in that pilot. If there's any schools out there that's interested in that, like, please feel free to reach out to us. It's free to join. All you need is a virtual reality headset, a MetaQuest 2 headset, and that's something that we can bring you along into, and you're more than welcome to join. So we're at we're out of time by the looks of it. So I just wanted to say thank you, Adam, and and to anyone who's watching. It's been a real pleasure talking to you about some of the work that we've been doing here at Liminal. If you're interested in giving it a try, just search for Liminal on the Meta store, and we'll you'll be able to find us on your MetaQuest 2 headset or MetaQuest Pro. We're going to continue to keep crunching out new content and continue with our R&D, and really happy for you to join us on our journey.
No, thanks everybody for listening. Really appreciate it.
All right. See you later, everyone.